then we're as close to John as we can kind of physically get. Did we have the spotlight back on, Jacob? Hi, John. I don't know if
Could you talk for me a minute, John, please? It's okay.
While John's getting your audio to work, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me, great. Okay. I'm going to invoke chair privilege. In a second, when we've got audio from you, I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about the site that you've used to perform in, but also the sound samples that you've used, because if you're prepared to reveal that, because the story that you were telling me, I think adds some dimensions to what's going on in what you've done. So yeah, but hold the thought until we can hear your voice. But that's my question.
You can hear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's so interesting in the orientation that you have me on the screen, because you're all looking up like in this direction, and I'm all looking at you like you're looking off somewhere else. Oh, technology.
Cool. So yeah, do you want to talk a bit about the site and the sound samples?
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for coming and watching this little video that we made. So this particular site, I'm chiming in from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where I currently reside, and that site in particular is Fort Mifflin, which is basically an old military fort. But I became aware of it because there's this great music festival that happens there over the span of 2 days. And it's got this great sort of circular energy to it, in that the sort of catacombs of the fort come around a circle and then meet the buildings, where I imagine probably more of your upper echelon military folks would stay. I can't tell you anything about the military. I don't know any of their proper titles, but there'd be these houses and there's a circular formation, and the circular formation kind of extends underground, so you can enter into it. And in the catacombs at this music festival I was in, they would have ambient artists kind of tucked away in different hallways and corridors and things. And anyway, so they're about to do this music festival again, and I thought, oh, what a great place to have this gorgeous kind of like brick background and also this sort of circular energy to be able to make this video. So I went in there to do this, and we were gonna do a little bit more outdoor work. That I was gonna show a little bit of scenes of some sigillic work being written in charcoal outside, but it was, I don't know what this is in Celsius, but it was 105 Fahrenheit outside, and I was like, let's not do that. We'll all burn up. So, not a good idea for that particular day. Yeah, but in the catacombs, it's a little bit cooler. So, yeah, in terms of, you want me to talk about the samples? So I'm like a kitchen sink witch. Like, I will throw whatever kind of like I find is sounding interesting to me, and I'll just kind of put it in the kitchen sink, and then sort of see what happens of it. So, some of them are sort of digital instruments. So there's a combination of digital instruments, a combination of field recordings that I took of me playing instruments, and then also environmental things. So I took some bird song and just kind of worked it through a bunch of different effects processors. And then I also took Crowley's wax tapes and then put them through some effects processors as well. And I've worked with those wax tapes before, and a couple of other things. And there's one section where you probably hear a lot of rhythmic breathing and things, and it's me kind of breathing in tandem with listening to the wax tapes. So there's a conversation I'm sort of having across time with my experience about listening to Crowley's tapes. Yeah.
Thanks so much, John. That's really helpful. Questions? Yeah, go, Kirsty.
Hi, thanks, John. I just found that really fascinating because I actually have my grandmother's sewing box at home, but for sewing, not for music. And again, as Elizabeth said, without ruining the magic, because it's definitely a magical music box for me now, how much is the box making the sounds or controlling the sounds from the laptop? How much is happening there?
Yeah, so this box came about, and I think it was the third instrument I'd made from a found object during the pandemic, and I found this. I think at like a flea market when I was looking for some things. So I had to take out all of its innards. So it was outfitted with different kind of like those wood compartments and things like that. So I stripped those out of there, and then I made I came up with sigils over this full moon process. Well, a lunar cycle for I think it was from new moon to full moon, and then I laser cut new inserts into it. And then there are 3 mini computers running in it. So one of them, if you saw, there are 2 copper kind of like plumber's pipes. So that works like via capacitive touch sensing. So it's kind of like a theremin. So where my hands are in relationship to it or touching it, I'm closing the circuit and making that sound off. And then in between those things, it's your proper sort of like string scale. So it goes from, it's like C to B. And then all of the knobs are controlled by another computer chip, which is just basically controlling different parameters of effects. So all of that information from those computer chips gets sent into digital software. So there's nothing on it where I could just not have that hooked up and play it. It wouldn't sound. Not unless, I mean, you could beat it with some drumsticks, but other than that, yeah, it wouldn't sound. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got one here.
Yeah, I wonder, could you talk a little bit more about the sigil aspect of it? I mean, of course, when I think of the word sigil, I imagine something visually, a graphic representation, but here it's produced mostly through the sound, as I imagine is what you're doing. So I guess just how does that process look, and how are you producing a kind of sigil representation? Do you come up with it beforehand and then sort of translate it into a music, or is there a kind of formula you're using? Or I'd just like to know more about that.
Yeah, sure. So there are 3 outlets for sigilization in this. There are the physicalized sigils that are etched into the box, that are less temporal and kind of a permanent piece of the equipment itself. There's the breath work was kind of more of a mantra sigilization that was going on in terms of the sound you were hearing with the breathing. And then there's software that I created that I use, which I draw sigils onto. It's kind of hard to describe, but if you could imagine, it's sort of on an XY axis. Let's just say a box, the Y and the X axis. And when I draw these into the software, it reads the software reads it on the XY axis, and the X and Y axis just basically go from 0 hertz up in frequency. So like that. So it's reading the sigil very quickly on this axis, and then kind of sounding off, just depending on what it's reading in that time. Yeah.
It's maybe worth mentioning as well. It's a bit of a shameless plug, John, but John's got some beautiful videos of physical sigilling as well, which were done outdoors during lockdown. Is that right? Yeah. So they're on video.
I was living in Colorado at that time, and I bought a drone with a camera. And if you know Colorado or have ever been there at all, there are these gorgeous mountains that go up to 14,000 feet. And I would travel up them, kind of thinking about spares, sort of work with sigils, how we come to be in this vacuous mind, and what physicalization or what behaviors or things that we're doing to get the ego past us so we can be in that state to kind of like transform our sigillic work. So my thing was hiking up to the top of a mountain, and then I would do these sigils that I basically put into kind of body shapes, like a gestural work, and then I would take video of it.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, as far as I know, sigils come with an intention. So, what was the intention of this that we just heard?
Yeah, I couldn't land on one for you. Like I said, so there are permanent sigils that are attached to the box, and the only way they could be removed is for me to physically just remove out the innards of the box and then to redo them or something. So that's kind of living with its own intention. The intentions of the sigils, some of them are kind of personal. Others are, well, I'll disclose a little bit about the sigils that are attached to this box. Some of them that are permanent, some that are not, is, you know, when the pandemic happened, at least here, we went into these periods of lockdowns, and I'm sure you went through the same thing and wherever you are. But they were a lot about isolation and then kind of trying to figure out how I can get more in contact with spirit, with ancestors both known to me, both related to me, and then ancestors that I've worked in more of a mythos sense. And I'm still carrying through the process, especially with this box, because it was made during this time of isolation and loneliness. It's really about, I think, deepening connection on some level. And that's why I tend to kind of work with specific sites. So whether it's in the mountains, whether it's in the sport, I'm really kind of pushing into what does it mean to have a conversation with the soul of a place, and how can we come into contact with that.
Thank you so much, John. I suspect we should probably wrap up so people can get coffee before the keynote, but is there one, I can squidge one last one in? Yeah, go.
Hi, I just wanted to know, have you played this instrument in another space, another place, and has it been a very different experience for you and the people watching that? You know, it seemed to me to take a life of its own on, as well as, I know you were playing it, it felt very much that you had other beings or people or with you. So would it behave in a different way in a different space, do you think?
Yeah, you know, I use this box. I do these Hecate sound baths for a couple of different places in the States, and this is the box I tend to use. And I do very much feel as though, you know, I kind of create the structure and the foundation for it. So I drop in the sounds that I want to play around with, but because of the way in which it interacts with the way that I touch it, and it really is a little improvisational sometimes. It doesn't behave. So it really, I think it takes on a little bit of the energy of what that particular space is. And those Hecate sound baths tend to be a little bit more in a meditative space, but they do tend to get a little riled, just depending on who's in the space and who's coming at that work. Yeah.
Thank you.
John, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for